My name is Ken Masterson, and this is a commentary to go with a blog post. It's for a person with chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS, and the person contacted me, and he was having severe brain fog trying to work the site. Now, the reality is, I have a full-time job in computer science, building systems for the petrochemical industry. Please don't blast me for contributing to that. Actually, the software I write makes them a lot safer and more efficient. So there's some redeeming aspect to it. Also have family, we just have some health issues, so that's also taking up time. And then this whole thing on the side is very time consuming. So what I try to do is teach people how to use it and to not to get involved trying to deal with individuals or whatever. Several reasons. I'm not qualified. I'm not a licensed medical professional. I'm a basically software developer who knows how to read and put together information and how to extract data from medical studies. So this person basically has had something odd since puberty. It's getting worse, etc., etc. Meets the criteria for chronic fatigue syndrome, which is usually a catch-22 anything a doctor can't put a hand on, but which has any one of 4 out of 16 symptoms at one time. The definition keeps changing, evolving, so it's a bit of a quagmire. So he has brain fogs, etc. So he sent a sample, and okay, I said I'll do a walkthrough, and I'm doing the walkthrough in the hopes of other people not having to ask me to do a walkthrough or to do a blog post, but you can do it yourself, self-serve. So my goal is working as a teacher here, not as a consultant. So we'll start by doing, first describe what I did, and then we'll go and walk through his sample. So it's 2 times 2. First of all, I did a performer review, which means this is what I usually do with every sample. It's a very simple process. I go into my profile, click on the overview, click health analysis, and it gives you a bunch of information which are general catch-alls. They are not sufficient. They won't catch everything, and in this case they did a lousy job of it. But basically we have a bunch of things here, and we have no particular thing. Obesity is interesting. His body mass is 22. He is far from being obese. He's skinny. So the fact that he's sitting 50-50 percentile, and in terms of prevalence of people, he's in the middle. So he doesn't have any obesity characteristic, and we don't really have a match for some of the other things. Everything here is what I call borderline. I have a video here which explains these measurements and how to interpret it. Everything here is basically not concerning. It may be borderline, but it's a weak aspect. He does one thing which is pro-inflammatory, which with chronic fatigue syndrome, not unexpected. Most of the time they are running medium to high inflammation, so not so expected. I went over to a criteria used by a naturopath in Tasmania, Australia, Jason Harlock, and by that criteria he's at a 98.8%. In other words, he's about as good as most people get, so he is solid there. So none of these high-level indicators indicates a problem. And one thing was interested, Blottia was sitting at 36% of the microbiome. That's a big chunk of the microbiome. Usually 5 to 10% is what Jason is looking for. He is way, way above that. And in fact, it was, when I looked at it, it was the highest level I had ever seen for Blottia in any of the samples. In other words, he is way off the chart. So there's one sort of match for he is showing signs towards having CFS without IBS 70th percentile. Not a strong fit, but he seems to be in that one. He mentioned no IBS issues, and so the ME without IBS seems to be a pretty good match for him. And we'll later, walking through things, we'll see that the same thing shows up again, that his microbiome has similarities towards that. Now, I went in and decided, because of the block here, to go in and take a look at what's going on and see. And we have one by using the corona chart, one of which is high, and as I discovered, it was not only was Blotius at the maximum seen, this one was also at the maximum ever seen in the other sample. So we're talking some things way, way over. The next thing I did was went to the microbiome tree. The microbiome tree is a visual of anywhere from 300 to 900 separate charts on one page, but it can be helpful for getting an overview if none of the above really stands out as showing a problem. Going through that often will give hints as to where the issues are. And what I found was, guess what? He had a whole stack of things through the roof. Higher than something for all these 100%. He was higher than anybody I had ever seen. So he was off the scale for a whole bunch of things. And other things, he was at the top. He was 99th percentile. The Firmicutes, which is a very high level thing, it's almost the equivalent of saying, what is the ethnic group of this country? And you suddenly get the 96% are the regions, or a county. 96% are the regions. That's not typical for a county in the U.S. So it means, okay, we have something distinctly different. We want to drill down into it. What we have is an overgraph. Now, here's the interesting thing. I know that Firmicutes and bacterioloids are often used in studies as a health indicator. And what is used is the ratio. So I calculated the ratio. The ratio of it was 228 to 1. Okay, the normal ratio is 1.5. Wait a minute. That's a little bit extreme, to put it mildly, very extreme. And I went and did a bit of digging around, and we can see what the ratio is in different parts of the world. So he is way, well, several screens over from here. And we want to go and try getting shifted over. The interesting thing I noticed, which will come back later, is that India, which tends to be high in vegetarian, spicy foods, etc., classic Indian food, produces a very, very low level, which almost implied, instead of doing a Mediterranean diet or anything else, do a Hindi all vegetarian diet using Indian food, which you can now purchase at Costco or other places, Dells, etc. There's a whole variety of things. You may have to get acquired to the taste. I have the joy of working for an Indian firm and being in India for a while, so to me, I actually like the taste. So that's one of the things is, hey, if you're talking about diet styles with this person, we have a new type of diet to come in. It's an Indian style vegetarian. Simple as that. If you have a high Firmicutes, that's probably what you really want to start looking at. Any suggestions? Usual way, which is use these three, and because of the extreme value, I ended up also doing percentiles in the top 5. For all of these, I looked at high values only, mainly because it dominates this microbiome so severely that really we want to bring down those high values so that we can get other things popping up. Those high values are just squashing everything else. So let's bring them down and see where we go. And then we got the suggestion, and the suggestions are similar to the suggestions from another person, which I did, which also had the same characteristic, also CFS with very high Firmicutes, however I pronounce it, excuse me. And what we end up with is nothing about food or eat. What we end up with is a stack of flavonoids and a stack of vitamins. Some of them, like this particular one here, is found in limes. So a couple of limes a day, literally a couple of limes a day. Certain oranges, not all oranges. A few particular types of oranges have it also. But limes are a safe bet for getting the supplement if you cannot buy it as a supplement or the cost is prohibitive or you prefer having it from natural sources. So there we have there, and you can keep drinking coffee, that's good. And then we have gluten-free diet, high protein, high red meat, those two are matched. But more importantly is generally meat diets result in the B vitamins coming in. And the B vitamin is what is being asked for. So it's there. So that's basically it. Mentioned Taste of India and Kitchen India, both of which are available in most grocery stores. So you may want to start eating some of those 60 seconds or 90 seconds to heat up meals, dals, and other things. Or alternative, if you have the time and the resources, go to India and spend 6 months at a traditional ashram to bring down those bacteria, because that seems to be the magic menu to move it way to the other extreme. He then asked a couple of questions, and first question was, he looked at the consensus view and says, okay, everything was listed, the best things to take. He asked about finding the worst things to avoid. And I just pointed out that the table basically is wired to sort. If you click here, it will sort of ascending, descending, ascending, descending. If you do shift and click one, then shift, keeping it down and pressing that, you can do it sorting by 2 columns or 3 columns if you want, and we'll just do it for you immediately on the page. He basically raises not basically a silly comment, it's a reasonable comment, because if you haven't gotten into the microbiome, it is what many people would suspect by common sense or common hearsay. Is how is vitamin B1 going to change your microbiome? He picked a large amount of foods with sauerkraut or sugar-free foods or whatever, and the answer is those things do change the microbiome. Chances are those things are going to change things in the wrong way. Sauerkraut is not a magic cure. It will shift things in certain ways, usually correcting what is typically a problem. But if you have an odd case of bacteria, which is very atypical, then it's a good chance it may not make things better, but may keep things worse. Okay. Our next question he asked is, my answer was basically saying bacteria feeds on chemicals, either by the abundance or the absence of it. It will alter how bacteria behave. I simply pointed out that one suggestion was based on Blottia, and if you set the disability level to intermediate, you actually can go in and see where the source of information comes from, and then if you click that, you'll get the studies. Pointed out one thing which is key to the website is I do not try to speculate or figure out, this is how things should work. I avoid, except where I've already declared it, and it is trying to figure out things in my head. No, I avoid speculation or wishful thinking. This is how it should work, which is wishful thinking. Is frequently is ideology. What I do is I work from actual peer-reviewed studies only. Keyword, evidence, and not speculation. Now, the last thing he did was he saw how I did it. He replicated what I did. So he basically has done a homework exercise, which is walk through the same step. He got the same thing. And he went and tossed in prescriptions. He was curious to see if there's any magic prescription drug. And his feeling like, okay, let's ask the doctor for a prescription. Probably reasonable because prescriptions for most people seem more likely to cause change than taking vitamins. Not necessarily. So what he has is he has a bunch of prescriptions. All of these would be off label. None of them would be prescribed for what he has, which means first of all he's going to be fighting his MD trying to get it. But more importantly, second, the third item down is vitamin B1. You don't need a prescription for that one. Another item is melatonin. You don't need a prescription for that one. Hesperin comes from limes. You don't need a prescription for that one. Ibuprofen. You don't need a prescription for that one. So we have a whole bunch of things which are intermixed with prescription. And what that usually to me means, don't go down the asking for prescription. When you've got things which likely have the same impact, which are non-prescription items, then go and use those things first. Once they have had effect, then you may want to look at your next sample results and see if you can make things better by the prescription. You really want the prescription item to be at least 20 to 40% higher in priority than foods. If it's not that much ahead, it's probably not worth the hassle and stress of trying to get it, and they may be other side effects, etc. Basically, go for things which are generally recognized as safe, magic words there. And then we went on to ask one more question. He went and checked probable symptoms, and there was nothing there. I know why there was nothing there, because they are matching patterns to other people reporting symptoms. With him at the 97th percentile, 96% of his microbiome is one class of bacteria, you're not going to get matches because you are unique or you are way out on the extreme. So it means nothing happens. He likes the idea of using the microbiome because it has a degree of accuracy. He has seen doctors for whoever knows how many years, probably 15, 20 years without progress. And my suggestion is let's get the first set of changes done. Then we'll come back and we look at things like obesity, which he is lacking. We know which bacteria are high or low for an obese person. We want to flip things upside down to see if we can get him fattened up. So basically is go in, make the changes, 6 weeks, probably 6 weeks after you start the changes, go and do another sample and see what has changed. With luck, he'll share the sample back with me, and we'll see how effective these suggestions are. Again, all the suggestions are model, no clinical experience behind it. But my experience so far has been that the modeling does cause positive changes. Every time people have done follow-up samples, things have been objectively improved, and frequently have reported subjective improvement. I prefer objective rather than subjective, but getting both is sweet. The one thing I did point out is 1 a day vitamin is not what you want to do. I went and we have a link for dosages based on clinical studies, dosages used in clinical studies. So these are dosages generally recognized as being safe. And you want to probably go as high dosage as possible, starting at a low dosage and moving up. And there we have a shortcut by using a simplified suggestion. It will download a file and you can see the dosages there. For example, vitamin C, 30 grams per day. It started with low and work up, but we now have the dosages that have been used in clinical style, many of them were shown to, for whatever purpose they were being used, did cause the desired effect. So that's basically it. One other thing I did was I've said, okay, is there anything in literature about Firmicutes? I checked studies on CFS, Q fever, Lyme, and the other related conditions, often misnomer, long COVID, and nobody says this pattern. This is a microbiome that has gone off and then its own thing, that is marched to its own drumbeat and off somewhere. Not quite all by its lonesome, because up here we have a link to somebody else who the same thing has happened. So the suggestion is read this blog post, read that blog post, and get a good idea. If you're a person with which are very high Firmicutes, that's something which should help you, and you should be able to do self-serve. Okay, now I'm going to jump over and we're going to walk through the site using his data. Okay, I've logged into him. One of the first things I'm going to do is just click things up to advanced. When you click things up to advanced, you get back to my profile automatically, redirect, but you also get a whole bunch of extra information there. One of the items there is supplement dosages, which is what you want to look up, and for the suggestions, see what the dosages are. Actually, let's go over and just show you what that is. So, gives you the name, a variety of things we have. How many do we have? 141 items. I'll probably be adding more over time, but if you are wanting to find out what dosage you should be doing, for example, let's look at vitamin. We have a variety of vitamins here. Let's, for example, we look at folic acid, which is a B9. And what we do is we can click here, which will list what modifies, what this particular modifier changes in terms of bacteria, or you can go over here to studies and clinicals. And what it does, it gives you lists either the clinical studies or the publication and what dosages were used. So we see 5 milligrams per day or is used in there. What I do is I usually go in, find them, and then I record the highest dosage used in a clinical study. Because what we really want to do is know what is a maximum generally recognized as a safe dosage. So that's the dosage you usually want to move up to. So there we have 5 milligrams per day there. Again, you can just click here to read the clinical studies or the actual study, or for any further information. Okay, so let's go in and continue onwards. So we'll hop back here and we're going to first do something. So my profile, we go down to health analysis. Now the numbers here are different and there's a bug which I'm going to address, but I'll show you basically what you should do. For example, let's take a look at allergies. It says 100%, that's a bug which will be fixed, but if I click here, we actually see the value for this sample is sitting on the chart and it's actually at the 60th percentile. So it's not 100%. I need to track down where a recent change caused numbers to go south. So if you go over to bacteria count, and what you see here is that we have approximately 27 of the bacteria are matches, and up here we have 54 for somebody who is at the high end. So we are about a 50th percentile of the high, 60th percentile, we are half the highest rate. So obesity is not a particular issue. So keep to the blog post for the rest of that. And if you have a question ever, just click the little icon here to show the chart, which will show you the right numbers and what the pattern is. Okay, now down below, what we have is compared to the blog post, we actually have a few more things showing up. Why? Because things like Doria was misclassified at 50th percentile, so it was a ignore. In this case, it's no longer an ignore. So there was a couple of additions here, but it's basically the same. The recomputation shifted things a bit, and that's something you need to be aware of, is that numbers from one week to the next week may change slightly. Something may just cross a threshold, so suddenly new things appear. And that's simply because we have more data. As more data comes in, we can refine and be more accurate. So everything is approximate there. And down we have here 98.8, which is exactly the case which we had before. So let's go back to my profile. Chrono chart can be interesting. In this case, it would have shown something, so it shows the different things. And if I go down to the Terra group, just double click here, what we have is we see Firmicutes. It's just about everything, and everything else is sort of there, and then we can just keep clicking down to see there. And over here we have the things which are not Firmicutes sitting in a different circle. We can go down further, and it keeps going down. As you see, we have a horrendously big chunk of that. Most of this won't make much sense to people unless you are familiar with looking at that. And there we see what Blotty is, and we see all the numbers there. So that is available. It takes a bit of expertise and experience to use it well. But what I do tend to use is microbiome tree. A microbiome tree basically does two things. One, it shows you the structure of the microbiome. Think of it this way. Root is the world, continent, country, state or province, county, city, neighborhood. So it's that type of hierarchy. So everything is going up with different classifications. And for every classification, we can get a measurement. Things which are particularly abnormal, depending on, of course, how you're doing it, are there. Let's go over to count off range, refresh the page and do different colors. Basically, it will go and attempt to flag things which are abnormal. The pink is low, the green, the blue is also low, the severity is. So you can just walk down here, and what I usually do is first look at the high numbers here, and the high numbers show where the red is where the number is. If it's at the extreme, then it tends to be color coded, and I may have to do some more debugging to do there. Things aren't exactly how I'd say, but we do see it as you go down. We see 100 percentile sitting here. We have other things, so you can see whether or not things are really abnormal or not. And from that is how I ended up getting the list and realizing that there was a whole bunch of things which were way out of line. Where you go is partially depends. So this is 83 percentile, whatever. So that will give you an introduction to how bacteria are grouped into layers of groups. The numbers, which is your value out of 1 million, and then the percentile ranking is how does this number ranks against everybody else's who has the same bacteria, which means, is this a typical value or atypical? If you see 3 percentile, you know it's atypically low. If you at 94%, it's atypically high, etc. And just can go down there, and usually the percentile is what I tend to use more. If you want to know more about any of the bacteria, just click here and take you to more information than you know what to do with, probably. So that's there. So at this point, I saw that the real problem was a massive overgrowth of one group of bacteria. So that gave me enough information to figure out what to do. Let's go back here. I can go over and look at probable symptoms, which is something he did. And I think you know why. That's probably because we have some extreme values and I got some bug fixing to do. The work never ends. And so we have a bunch of things to download it in different formats depending on what you want to do it. Most of those are sort of advanced or feature for people who like to play with the microbiome. But over here we have consensus. He did 4 packages. What he did first was click using here, restricted to high value, click, get the values back, change, click, get the values back, click, get the value back, and then as I just did there, and then I can go, of course, go back, and we now have 5 packages, etc. And once you have done that, you can go and view the packages, and we'll give you the things, and things are done. The best things to do on one side. If you want to see the things to avoid, you just click there, and we now have things to avoid. And it's interesting. Look at all the probiotics which are to be avoided. Look at the inulin which is to be avoided. Dietary fiber. Tons of things which often for other people will make things better. In this case, it will make things worse. In other words, if the person went with common folklore as to what will help, it's not going to help. It's going to make things worse. So that's it. And up here at the top are things to make things better. And we have a long list of how many items. We have 443, which is actually a very small number of items, which is interesting. But you can also download it as a CSV file, which you can upload in Excel or other things. And there for then for things like this one, which is flavonoid, you could, if you want to, go over, and there's not a link here, and the reason there's not a link is because we have different things being called different things on different parts of the site, and actually that's the wrong way. It should be food microbiome there, and I'm looking for nutrients, and there is that. I can rid of the polypropanol name and see if I have it listed. There is, and we have 13 foods with just as a in it. So these are the foods that have it, and you can see it. Of course, you're going to have fun walking into your local food store and ask for, can I have some bearberries or some cowberries? If you have a Ikea close by, you can walk in and ask for a lingonberry. And then we go down to things are there, not strawberries, but strawberry trees. Quince jam is another source. But notice quince jam is just 2.69. It's practically nothing compared to lingonberry. So you probably want to see about ordering lingonberry either if you have IKEA close by or by Amazon. In fact, let's just check Amazon just for the sake of examples. And we have lingonberry powder and lingonberry jam, which is the old familiar ones from which IKEA stock. And then we have other things. We have upsets cranberry. We have lingonberries there. And I'll let you figure out what your best deal is in a moment. Felix, this one looks almost like it's the best deal of everything there. Actually, comparing that, it is probably the best. You could add lingonberry powder if there's a problem with sugar. So you may have to do a little bit of hopping around over to foodmicrobiomeprescription.com for some of the favorite notes to find what foods are in, or if you can buy as a supplement, then you can do that. So let's go back and see about that one as a supplement. And we don't find that as a supplement in the usual sense. It is available as facial cream, etc., or as face whitener, etc. Not sure about the safety of consuming it. You may want to just check with the provider, but again, you have options, and now you just have to figure out whether or not you want to get it as a powder or as a lingonberry jam. Personally, I prefer lingonberry jam. Okay, let's go back to where we were. So we have the consensus there going down, and I think that's largely it. Licorice is something I've used personally. It does a nice job. Cellulose, again, tea, which again, reason is there is caffeine is one of the items. Tea has caffeine, quercetin, cranberries, etc. We have one probiotic mixture there, which is not available commercially. But notice we're down to 500s. We have thousands up there. So we're talking with things with less predicted impact or less confidence of impact. Actually, the priority is more on confidence than amount of impact. Okay, so at this point in time, I think I'll shut up. I've basically gone through. There is a lot more on the site. Oh, I know the other thing. I want to go over there. And this basically looks at the matches. And you have person has a 13% match for enemy CFS without IBS, which is the same situation which he had using the PubMed one. And it's the strongest one there. General fatigue, etc. So all of those are chronic fatigue type thing there. So from special studies, he had a reasonable degree of match up with things he sees there, and you can go and get suggestions there and add that. If you go and click here and add that to your suggestions, it will filter by those things. 68 ones. Notice almost all of these are too lows. And if you take a look down here, we have different things there. And it's part of the problem is that this one basically filters on things that are too low and ignores things that are too high, because that's what the pattern was focused on. We are in a world of things being massively too high, which is why we want to not make use of the low ones. Okay, research features with events. You get all sorts of delightful things there. And I'll just leave it to you. See things which are over and which are under. Lots of explanations for here, but I won't go into it. It's not ideal for somebody just starting off. Basically, those two should do everything. Special studies could be of interest mainly for the matchup, but be careful because almost everything here, the match is done on items which you are low on. In this case, you're low on just about everything because you have things after scale on the other end. So you're going to get a totally different type of suggestions. And since we are focused on high amounts, you want to really avoid that. Okay, 40 minutes is enough for anybody to watch a video, so I'm going to shut up and get it uploaded.